Welcome to the Strategic Veteran, where we chart the course from service to civilian triumph. I'm Adam Peters, a veteran, entrepreneur, and your fellow navigator in the quest for a life of impact and fulfillment. My mission is simple: to empower you with the tools and stories that turn challenge into opportunity. Having walked the path from active duty to where I stand now, I understand the search for purpose that comes with hanging up the uniform. It's a path I've walked, with its trials, its tribulations, and its victories, and it's a journey we're on together. This podcast is more than just conversation. It's a beacon for those seeking to redefine our missions through entrepreneurship. It's about igniting the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within us, the spirit that compels us to create, lead, and make our mark on the world. Here we connect with veterans who have built businesses, sparked change, and found their purpose in the marketplace of ideas. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They've transformed their service into startups, their experiences into enterprises, and they're proof that you can too. So whether you're scribbling business plans on napkins or stepping into the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. Welcome back to the Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today we have an exceptional guest, Rich Harden. Rich served for 4 years in the U.S. Navy and has since transitioned into a remarkable second career. From his time in the military, where he learned the value of leadership and following by example, to his incredible journey in law enforcement and now in dog training, Rich's story is one of resilience, adaptability, and reinvention. After his time in the Navy, Rich quickly entered the law enforcement community, finding his purpose in serving and protecting his community. However, once he retired, he faced challenge many veterans know all too well, finding a new mission. For Rich, this mission was dog training, where he built $1 million business alongside his wife. But it didn't stop there. Rich is now working on launching an online dog training program and starting the Grizzled Guild, a men's group designed to empower others. His message for veterans is simple but powerful. The military is what you did, not who you are. You can begin anything you want. Today, Rich is here to share the lessons he's learned, his vision for the future, and the driving force that keeps him pushing forward. He's a true example of the embodiment of a strategic veteran, always on a mission, always growing. So let's welcome Rich Harden to the show. Rich, good morning, brother. Welcome to the show. It's good to have you.
Thanks, Adam. I'm honored that you invited me to be on your show. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Everybody's story is worth telling, brother, and that's how we heal as a community, how we move forward as a community, and stop taking our own lives. So it's important. And with that, man, let's just dive right in. Like, what inspired you to join the Navy? What was that all about?
Well, just service. You know, I come from a family of service. My dad was in the Navy. And it had been a police officer. And as I was getting a little older, I thought, I haven't done that. I need to, something I always wanted to do. And I wrote into the recruiter's office and said, hey, I want to join the Navy and I'd like to leave as soon as possible. And he was more than happy to accommodate me.
Yeah, it's funny how that works, right?
Yeah,
you just walk in there and you're like, hey, I want to leave now. And they're like, oh, okay. You watch them scramble around the office like, is this guy serious?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why the Navy?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I was actually looking towards the Air Force, but the Air Force recruiter was just a jerk. So I walked back across the hall of the Navy and they were there.
Yeah, fair enough. So 4 years, did you enjoy being on a ship? Was that
I don't know if anybody really enjoys being on a ship. Haze, gray, and underway is a real term. Basically you're just an indentured servant that does a lot of cleaning. That's what I got out of that. But no, I had a job. I was a radioman. Ended up being which part of the tech control section. We're setting up, and maintaining communication circuits on board the ship. So if you're not doing your job, then nobody's communicating anywhere. So learned a lot. It helped me when I actually got out. The first job I got, I didn't know what I was going to do when I got out, and I said, okay, well, there's an ad for cable guy. So I went to a cable installer. This was 95, 94, somewhere along in there. And I was talking, the guy was looking at my background. He goes, hey, I'm going to stop you right now. I'm going to let you go over and talk to this guy. And I walked in, the guy goes, what's that piece of equipment right there? I said, it's a spectrum analyzer. And he said, you're hired. And so I got a promotion right before I got hired. So I was a repair guy instead of an installer.
That's thanks, Navy, for teaching me something that a lot of people didn't know back then, right?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, your comment about nobody really likes being on a ship. I was just watching Midway last night, what that I couldn't imagine just being on a ship and just like
Yeah, well,
all
I was on an old ship too. I was on the USS Denver LPD-9, and I think it was built in like 1962, and it was we had done retrofits, and it was just it was always breaking down. We were always in the shipyards. You make a deployment and then something would blow up. It's just constant.
yeah, for sure. So you realized pretty early on the military service wasn't for you. So is that kind of why just for and done?
Yeah, I'd actually looked at, when I got out, that was Clinton's military. So everybody was downsizing and they were letting everybody out early and they wanted you to go. I'd actually tried to reclass to Master at Arms law enforcement, and they just wouldn't let me do it. They were just downsizing. And so I said, the option was to go to Japan unaccompanied. I was actually married at the time, and it was an unaccompanied position to Japan. And I was like, nope, not doing that. So out I went.
Right, for sure. What did you just like? Did you have a plan when you got out at
Absolutely
all?
not. No,
No plan.
no
So
plan.
moving into your transition was probably pretty rough, huh?
Because I had a wife and a couple of kids, and young kids. So they're all in their 30s now, but they were young. And so we drove back across country. We were stationed in San Diego, and I live in Kentucky. Drove back across country, and I had 45 days of terminal leave, and next thing you know, I was a cable installer before my leave was up, or a repair guy. So
In Kentucky,
in
I grew up
Kentucky,
in Southern Indiana, so I know Kentucky pretty well.
yeah, right
And
in the big Louisville city right there. That's where I was at.
yeah, yeah. Um, how did your time in the Navy like? What did it teach you about leadership and teamwork for your later in life? What you would be doing? Was it a lot? You know, did you have that camaraderie and stuff in the Navy back then as a downsizing Navy that kind of carried you into after the cable install job? I assume that didn't last very long before you finally got on with law enforcement, right?
Yeah, it was about 6 months, 7 months,
Yeah,
somewhere along
yeah.
there.
So did
I
you
was I was
carry
just
any of that stuff with you to law enforcement?
Yeah, I think the military, what it really taught me was leadership is not a rank, it is where you are. It's not a position that you hold. Everybody's a leader. It's about taking care of the guys around you, who's on the left side of you, who's on the right side of you, and because no one is responsible for your happiness. That's There's a lot of people when you look at your leadership that people think that they're making you happy, and that's just not the case. You have to find joy in what you do, in anything that you do, and put your head down and work. I think that's the biggest thing that I see on social media today, and I'm sure we'll get to the entrepreneurship here in a minute. That it's hard work.
Yeah,
It's
it's real
work.
hard.
No one is an overnight success, and no one is self-made.
Yeah,
Everybody has help. We've had help as a business. Uh, Everyone I know that ever made it to anywhere has had help or garnered something from someone else to get to where they are.
yeah, for sure. So that transition out of the Navy, 6 months is not really. I mean, you're really largely when you're getting out of the military, still trying to figure out, like, put all the pieces together, figure out who you are, and then you land the job in law enforcement, which I imagine kind of brought you back to the top because now you're a part of a team again. You've got that camaraderie, you've got purpose, you're serving others. So what was it like transitioning into law enforcement? Was it a pretty seamless transition for you just because you had the discipline of the Navy? Did you have to relearn some things? Like, I always often think when I hear these guys talking on the radio, like, I'd be fucked, man, because I'm so ingrained in Army radio talk that, like, when they start reading license plate numbers and shit, I'd be like, I get it all wrong.
Well, I did a little bit too because like I said, being a radioman, it was military speak all the time. So just learning the phonetic alphabet with people's names versus ours, it was a little different. And I would every now and then when I first started, I would backtrack, fall back
Yeah.
into calling it instead of Lincoln and Lima, whatever. But everybody just laughed about it. Wasn't really a big issue.
Yeah.
But the transition to law enforcement, Kentucky's pretty good. They have a really good police academy. The Department of Criminal Justice training is back when I went through was like the number 2 academy in the whole nation, and they had
Oh,
done a
that's
lot of
cool.
stuff for teaching and learning, and they had give us a pretty solid foundation of knowledge. Obviously, law enforcement isn't on the job training.
Yeah.
Because there's no amount of training, even when you go through your field training officer phases, they can't prepare you for every call that you're going to make. That's just it's a time spent endeavor to get good. becoming my biggest quote in my life is become a student of your profession. Know what you can and can't do, and that puts you in a great place, no matter what you encounter.
Yeah. Do you remember your first call?
I do. Uh, it wasn't my first call was pretty mundane. It was just a traffic accident. But my second call was a fella who had committed suicide by shotgun. Yeah, and that was he shot himself on the sidewalk of his patio home, and it was something else.
Yeah. How did you deal with that?
Well, it's funny. It wasn't funny that he took his life, but my response to it concerned me because after we got done, coroner came. Obviously, it was very obvious that he was deceased. Collect all the evidence, take pictures, do the crime scene like we're supposed to. He had left a note, so it's not like it was the crime of the century, so kind of knew what was going on. But I noticed as I was moving through the process that I was getting hungry. I mean, it's like starving. And I'm thinking, this is a really bad scene, and why am I getting hungry? I'm like, daggone. So I worked for a small agency at the time, and we had to do our own. We didn't have detectives. So basically, if you were a police officer and you caught the call, then it was yours to fruition. So I ended up having to go to the coroner's office the next morning. And so I actually was talking to the coroner about my response. And she said, well, it's because you have a high drive to live. She said, so food is sustenance. And so when you go to these things, this is probably something you're going to encounter occasionally. And I was like, okay, maybe then I'm not crazy after all.
That's interesting.
I thought it was a very weird response, of myself.
Yeah. Well, and I can remember being hungry in some pretty shitty situations overseas too. It's like, this doesn't make sense. Why am I hungry?
Yeah, that's what it is. Because that's what she said anyway. I mean, I've not done any research past it. I just kind of took her for her word and said, okay, she sees death every day. She's got to know something about it.
Right. Yeah, she's smarter than I am. So
there's a lot of people smarter than me for sure.
We'll take this. How long were you a law enforcement officer, and did you do anything special inside of that role? Did you kind of climb that ladder? I don't know.
On a small agency, I ended up being a sergeant. We had like 12 dudes that I was in charge of at night or whatever. But then I transferred to a lateral to what was then the Jefferson County Police in Louisville. Louisville Police Department the city had two different agencies, had a county police and a city police. And the county police is where I lateraled to. And then once I got up there a couple years later, it became Louisville Metro, where they combined the county and city together for one humongous organization. Excuse me. And there I did, I was a patrol officer, a field training officer. I was on, they had a part-time SWAT team. I ended up being on the SWAT team. I was K-9 at the smaller agency before I left there. And then I became a detective for a short period of time there. And then I moved into the training academy. And that was probably the coolest job I had on the police department, was working in the training academy.
Why was that the coolest job you had?
Well, I got to teach tactics. I got to write my own curriculum. And, the most rewarding thing is something that you teach someone and they come back to your office and they say, hey man, I just want you to know, I went through your class about 6 months ago and this saved my life.
Dude, that's so powerful.
Absolutely. So, because being a police officer, a lot of times you don't get to see the outcome of what you do on calls. I always say we're the Band-Aid police. You get a call, you go there, you do what you can legally, you dispense information. If an arrest is made, you can make an arrest. But a lot of times you're just telling people what the law says you can and can't do. And then we go on to the next call. You don't know the outcome of those people's lives.
Right.
Right. So you don't, over time, as the years go on, because I was a police officer, 20 years the first time. So,
first time.
Yeah. We don't want to get into that right now. But you get to that, am I making a difference? Is what I'm doing matters, Yeah. And that's because that's what you became a police officer. You're serving your community. You're going, you find very quickly that, I can't go to someone's house and fix their problem in 15 minutes that they created in the last 30 years of their lives.
Yeah.
There's some people in real need. It doesn't mean that you don't treat people well, because, when the police show up, you're not showing up to people's best day.
Ever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, even citizens that call the police, that aren't criminals have not had a great day. They've had their stuff stolen. They've been assaulted. They've been in a car wreck. Again, this is not the greatest day of their life either. And you get to go to all those joyous occasions and try to make things better. And so, there's guys that I worked with and girls that I worked with that showed up that can make things worse. And guys that would actually try to show up and actually help people and try to make things better.
Yeah. So without trying to get too political here, did you ever have to deal with any of kind of the recent law enforcement kind of society's views on defunding the police, all of that stuff? Did you experience any of that towards,
No.
I guess, the end of your career?
No, I mean, it always, there's an ebb and flow, right? It's just, even with what's going on now, and not being political whatsoever, but the first thing out of everybody's mouth is the police need more training. Well, positional asphyxia, which I don't think we can even use that term anymore, politically incorrect as well. We learned that in the 90s, and so what does the training look like? When you say police need more training, well, what training do they need? Who's going to pay for that training? How are you going to come up with that? We go through diversity training. We've done that since the 90s. Nothing is, there is the misconception because of the media. And of course, this is my opinion, my judgment only, that they take a very small percentage of bad things that happen and blow it out of proportion.
Correct.
The last statistics, I wish I should have looked up on the phone. The FBI statistics, there's 10 million calls for service across the nation, and less than 1% of those ended up in some type of death.
Right.
So you can't tell me this is widespread. And can we do better? We can always do better.
Everybody can always do better.
You're always trying to hold yourself to a higher standard. Leadership is trying to hold people to a higher standard. And I think as we look across the nation now, coming back into law enforcement after being gone 11 years, I missed all those riots and all that kind of stuff. And now nobody wants to do the job, and so they can't fill positions. So guys, departments are reaching out to guys like me to say, hey, can you come back and fill a spot for a while?
Right.
So the Defunding campaign actually implemented now. Their pay has increased exponentially across the nation. Now I'm making 11 years later over double what I did when I retired.
Wow.
Double. One check is more than I made a month at Louisville Metro Police Department, right?
Right.
So because they're going to have to pay you now to get people to do the job. And so and citizens are going to get exactly what you wanted. If you got on the Defund Me campaign, you're going to see the outcome of what you desired, because the people that are coming in law enforcement do not look at it as a profession. They look at it as a job. Mm-hmm. We always thought it was a calling, that we're there to help people. The warrior ethos that, a lot of us swore to back in the day. You can't say that word anymore. Warrior is a bad term. Well, warrior is actually a really good term, because the warriors protected their communities.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, when I was managing the gun store up in Washington and Olympia, all the Lacey Police Department, Olympia Police Department guys would come in. We were probably the best shop in town at the time. Not anymore, but I got to know those guys well, and they were dealing with a lot of that stuff, right? Like the Chaz Chop thing had happened in Seattle, so they had taken over however many blocks up there. All the Seattle police just walked off the job. They were just done, right? Yeah, and then immediately Seattle was like, where are the cops? It's like, well, you got what you wanted, you know what I mean? And then talking to some of those guys that would come in the gun store, and just how much their hands were tied behind their backs, not being able to do the job anymore. We're talking guys with 15, 16, 17 years on the force are walking away, just like that close to retirement, like fed up, ready to just leave. And, it was kind of sad. And I'm glad that you're talking about this stuff, because what does the training look like? You say you want more training, right? Like the media blows these things out of proportion. I saw a video last night of, it's one of those just short 1-minute clips. It's heavily edited. You can tell. And basically it's like, this town, I forget where it was, has no police force anymore. Right. Well, if you do some digging into that, you find out that the chief in the video is retiring after 30 years, and the town only has two other officers, and they're both retiring as well. So like, it's a really small police force in a really small town, and it's like you've taken this thing and turned it into something way bigger than it actually is. Now people have to go do digging for this information, right? I mean, I think personally, like, and I would say this, for military members too, because I saw it when I was in. There are things that I think could be better about our law enforcement. Like, there's no reason guys should be enforcing the law that are 100 pounds overweight, right?
Oh, I agree.
Spilling out of their uniforms, right? Like, maybe implementing some kind of fitness test for you guys, because the way I've heard it is you only do one really kind of in the academy, and then you're not held to any standard afterwards.
It's funny you mentioned that. I wrote my master's thesis on that very subject.
Well, this is going to make for a good conversation then, because I really am interested in this.
So, and that's the argument that I made, is that, we hold these recruits to a standard of physical fitness that, and it's the lowest standard. It's the lowest bar to get in, right? 20 push-ups, 20 sit-ups, a mile and a half run, 300 meters, body fat standards. I think it's 65% of your body weight on a bench press. And I'd have to look at some of those numbers now. They could have changed since I took that test many, many years ago. But it's after the fact, so we teach them, how to be fit in the academy. We have a good schedule. And then you stick them on late watch, where the only thing is open is fast food, and now they're trying to play catch up on this job they got, and they're overwhelmed. And so they start eating, they start working off duty, they start letting their health go. And next thing you know, they're 60, 70 pounds overweight. And, how effective are you? Can you, I won't mention any names, but, I once hooked an AED up to my own beat partner because he was having his own heart attack because he was obese.
Not cool, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, you just can't, how effective are you? Can you help someone? Can you,
Right.
if somebody gets hurt, can you pick them up, throw them on your shoulder and get out of the door? I don't know, but that's in my thesis. I discussed that and how to make an incentive-based program to keep people in shape. Whether you give them more time off, you pass the test every year, you get a couple vacation days. Your department, Chicago, had done a good job implementing that. Louisville Metro just opened the new Health and Wellness Center that's supposedly adding, more things to not only just fitness, but mental health stuff too.
How often do you guys have to go qualify? Because I say this as someone who religiously carried when I was practicing shooting all the time as my right as a citizen to conceal and carry and all of that. By and large, I don't anymore because I haven't shot in a long time. And for me, like, personal standards mean something. I learned that in flight school, and, kind of carried that from my military career over to flight school, and now even into my personal life. So like, I'm not proficient as proficient as I would like to be to justify carrying a loaded weapon around, in a situation where I'm going to have to use it. How often are you guys qualifying?
The current agency that I'm working for now is twice a year, and that was when I was on Metro. It was twice a year. You have a spring and fall qual typically.
Yeah, that's the same way the Army does it, and I don't think it's nearly enough.
It's not enough. I know with Metro, you would usually, you're looking at shooting your 45 or 50 round qualification course. Now, the agency I work for now does a great job at smashing mags together, and when we go there, we shoot a lot. Again, and they have open range each month where you can go and get extra training. They provide the ammo for you. So the department I work for now is trying to do a better job at getting people more proficient. Because, again, once you do the standard, right, it's the lowest standard. It's not it's not the highest standard. This is qualifications are trying to get a bunch of people through to say, hey, they know what a sight picture is, and they hit what they aim at. That's what you're trying to accomplish, right? And again, it's a low standard. It's not It's not a high standard.
And I only asked that because my brother is a probation and parole officer in Pennsylvania. He's a supervisor up there, and he just became firearms instructor qualified through the state of Pennsylvania. He's super excited about it, but he's fighting the same battle. He believes very much like we believe, like you're not shooting enough, you're not proficient enough, and it's an uphill fight that he's having over there, right? Like, Pennsylvania is, as a state, is largely broke. I found that out. I think they're like the third closest to bankruptcy, like just going completely under, and to the point where, like, as a probation and parole officer, they gave him a state car. Well, now as a supervisor, they're taking that away from him and basically telling him that he's going to have to come out of pocket to drive around and do his job. And it's like, come on, guys, what are we doing here? You're not facilitating these people to do the job that you've tasked them with. You're already understaffed, right? His caseload is out of control. I'm sure it's probably the same thing for your department. Like, I don't think people realize like how, I don't want to say it's an awful job. Being a law enforcement or a first responder in general is an awful job, but I mean, it's a tough job and it's a demanding job and it's a lot of long hours and it's taking its toll on you largely like the military does. And that's why I only know this because of the work with the nonprofit, but first responders are taking their lives in way greater numbers than the veteran community is. And it's staggering. And I'm kind of curious, like, why is that? Is it because of, lack of kind of training like we were talking about? I know when people say more training, your question is what training do you want? But like we've identified some areas of training, right? Like the physical fitness part of it. Like obviously that's tied to your mental health, believe it or not.
It
And
absolutely is.
and then the shooting stuff. So like, what do you think it is that's causing, kind of the suicide epidemic in the first responder community?
Well, I think some of it is poor management as far as talking to people, because that misconception, just like in the military, I came from uh, the generation of, you don't tell anybody about your feelings, you just suck it up and move on, Sally. That's what they told you, right? So, so in police officers, in the beginning of, if you came forward, they're afraid, okay, well, I'm going to look weak. They're going to take my gun. I'm not going to be able to be a police officer anymore. And that's just not the case now. The veterans that have come forward, and the more that, especially I've noticed that there's a lot of guys from the special operations community that's come forward about what the struggles they're dealing with. And that's enabled other people to move forward. They're like, well, this guy, who's at the top of the food chain is having problems, because newsflash, folks, everybody has something going on. No one's
everybody.
perfect. Everybody's got something going on, and it's how we manage it. So if we look to alcohol and solace, just being by ourselves and getting away from our friends and not communicating and not working, that's the downfall. And I think, law enforcement's an easy community to beat up, right? Because of what happens. Bad things, when they happen, it's bad. It's really bad. But I think our biggest issue in the law enforcement community is leadership.
Ooh.
Absolutely. One of the biggest things, man. If I can't count on you for the little things on the department, how can we count on you for big things when something bad happens?
So where is the breakdown in leadership then?
Well, I think I don't think they come forward and say, when they have a shooting and they say, why don't people shoot you in the arm? Well, you've never been trained to shoot people in the arm. You shoot people center mass to stop the threat. Well, no one, the leaders, trainers, academies, they don't step up forward and testify and stand in front of the media and say, well, this is how they're trained. He did what he was supposed to do. But see, that's not popular. And then everybody, they're afraid they're going to get beat up or they're going to lose their position or whatever. But that's not the fact. The cold hard fact is that's exactly how you trained me to do it.
Right.
And now you're not going to support me and say, I should have shot him in the pinky finger. What?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not what we do.
That's an interesting dynamic because, we know for a fact when you go through that training, right? Like military, law enforcement, any of that stuff, you do so many reps of that stuff. It becomes, just natural reflex. You just act on it. You don't even think about it. It's just, this is what you do in this situation. And now I could see that guys, falling back on their training, right? I heard that my whole military career: rely on your training, rely on your training, rely on your training. I'm sure you guys preach that in the departments as well.
Absolutely.
And then the second you rely on your training, you're getting hung out to dry.
Yes, sir. And that's, all the things that people implement all the time, the squeaky wheels show up and they want to do this or that. Right now, I guess the big thing is body cameras, right? Our agency just went to body cameras, and I'm not against the body camera, but if I was in charge, I would have told them we're not doing body cameras. Do you know how much storage, how much it costs for agencies to store the video footage? We're talking millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Small agencies can't do this, folks. When you got a 10-man department somewhere in the city, they can't store their stuff. It'll bankrupt the police department quickly. And if
there's no easy answers for any of this stuff. Right?
Well, yeah, like there's plenty of answers. There's a really easy answer. You hire the right people, and then when people have a problem, you document their problem and you get rid of them. That you have confrontational conversations. If you're screwing up, they go into the office, they get written up, they put them on paper. If you do it again, they fire you. That's what should happen, but they don't have these conversations. And that's what I say. It's leadership. Well, that guy up there in St. Louis, how many problems did he have before the George Floyd incident?
Yeah, he had a bunch of problems.
Yeah,
he was like
absolutely.
a problem child. Didn't he like move departments like a bunch because he was a problem child?
Yeah. So you have a cancer on your agency, that nobody deals with.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden something bad happens, right?
And now you got to deal with it.
And now it's all of a sudden, now it's a really bad problem. Right.
Yeah.
So
let's move into your entrepreneurial journey. I assume that you said you worked canine a little bit in your first 20 years on the force. Did that really spark something in you with dogs?
It absolutely did. I became a canine officer at that small agency. And man, as soon as I got a working dog, I had a Labrador. I realized very quickly I knew nothing about dogs.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. I love dogs, and I can't wait to pick your brain on all this stuff.
Yeah, when you become a canine handler, I guess the big picture, people looking in, everybody thinks you're a dog trainer. Well, you are a dog trainer, but you don't necessarily know what you're doing as a dog trainer, right? Anybody that owns a dog, in my opinion, is a dog trainer. Because dogs learn through association. So things you do with your dogs, you're teaching them whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. It may not be good for your home, but your dog just learned how to do it, right? And that's kind of where I was with this dog. I got this dog, and a really good friend of mine helped me get the dog, and he was a dog trainer and a canine officer, and he'd shown me a lot of things, and really, due to him, it's why I kept moving forward as a dog guy. And but I learned very quickly, man, I don't know anything about dogs, and that was a really big eye-opening experience. And then I wanted to be good, because I say that throughout our nation, we have canine officers that ride around with dogs in the back of their cars. That's cops with a dog in the back of the car. Or you have a canine officer that gets out, trains his dog, works his dog, has activity, Yeah. And that's what I always wanted to be. When my dog showed up, I wanted them to feel like, well, hey, maybe we didn't find anything, but they did the best they could, and that's what I always, desired for the outcome of all my deployments with the dog. And
so,
go ahead.
So with the dogs, are there different, I mean, like we've got military working dogs that are trained to sniff out explosives, right? You got the drug dogs, you've got human remains dogs. Like, are you guys running different kinds of dogs in the departments as well? Like, what does that look like?
Most departments, larger departments will have explosive canines, will have drug dogs, they'll have patrol dogs that do tracking and apprehension work or bite work, right? Currently on my agency now, I'm running just a detection dog. We're just doing drug detection. So people call us for come out to search for drugs on cars or search warrants or whatever. That's all that department wants. They didn't want the liability of a bite dog, and I can't blame them. It is what it is, and it's a lot of fun. But yeah, so there's all different departments depending on the size. We're a 50-man agency and we have one dog. So. And then you look at like Philadelphia has 30 dogs, right? So
yeah, for sure. So working with the dog, did that really spark kind of the idea in your head that when it's time to retire, I'm going to walk away from this and I'm going to train dogs? Like what did that journey look like for you?
Well, I never wanted my own business, right?
Okay.
It's not something I desired to do. I didn't want to do it at all. But working with the dog did spark training, and I always had a side hustle of training obedience dogs for people, because once they find out, you know anything about a dog, and I was like, it was, again, my friend, he had a dog training company as well, and I'd helped him. And so I just always trained dogs throughout my whole police department time, even when I wasn't a canine handler for up here in Louisville. I always trained dogs. I had, some kennels at the house, and I kept them as full as I could. And I went to seminars and different instructions throughout my, 20 years, and just kept growing as a dog trainer.
So this was something that you were already passionate about.
Oh yeah. I loved working with dogs, because just being able to teach a dog new things and watching them connect the dots is just a really, really cool thing. Especially working line dogs. They have all this energy. They want to do things, and they do things wrong all the time that doesn't fit into our life. So when you can shape those behaviors, because you're really not training them, you're shaping behavior. All these things dogs do naturally. It's a big misconception that you can make drive in a dog, and you can't make drive. You can enhance what they do, but you can't make it. If the dog doesn't have the drive to go hunt for a toy, you're not going to make him hunt for a toy when he doesn't want to do it.
No. My golden doodle is a prime example of that. She is very much her own person, and you are not getting her to do anything she doesn't want to do. So I'm always fascinated by like the dog training business or whatever, because like when you really learn kind of the mindset of a dog, they need to be working all the time. They're here to work. Like they're happiest when they're working. And if it's like, it's almost akin to us as veterans and ex-law enforcement guys, right? Like you have to give them that purpose. And without it, they're just miserable, it seems. Like my golden retriever is getting older. He's got some joint issues, and he still loves being outside, walking, running, swimming, all that stuff. But he just can't do it anymore. And he just lays around the house because he's miserable, because that purpose is gone for him now.
Yeah, dogs, especially these high drive dogs, the energy has to get burned off somewhere. So you can put them in the backyard and they can run around until they burn their own energy off and learn all the bad things. Or you can teach dogs to live with you, to do things with you. The biggest thing that we teach dogs to do in the company is to follow their handler, their owner. Instead of trying to lead, to learn to follow, and that's really hard for a dog to do. And the more they become engaged, you can see mentally they get tired very quickly, because they're so focused now on the owner. Like, okay, what are we doing next? What are we going? And their mind is just busy, and they, a 20-minute session, they're going to take a 3-hour nap. Which is nice, especially when they're learning it, right?
So you had no desire to start a business. You're running this side hustle your whole time in the department, on the force, whatever that looked like. What took it full time? What was that for you?
Well, I got a phone call from my friend, and he asked me to come and try out for a position with the Navy to train dogs for the special warfare community. And he said, I can't get you a job, but I can get you the look. So I came up and I interviewed and I got hired.
Nice.
And I thought that was going to be my retirement dream job, to travel around. I was divorced, so just traveling in the backpack with some dogs and some team guys, and going all over the country and training dogs in cool places. And I thought, well, this is it. This is where I'm going to be till I can't do it anymore. And, in the contract world, becomes very difficult sometimes. And that lasted a couple of years. And we worked without a contract, went month to month for a while. And it just didn't end up working out. So I ended up had gotten remarried, and we moved back to Kentucky. And I was like, well, what the heck am I going to do now? And I said, well, I'm halfway decent dog trainer. So let's try this dog training thing full time. And I was teaching at a local college, which was my full-time job. And then I started this side hustle.
What were you teaching?
Criminal justice classes.
Yeah.
And it like one of the local colleges. Yeah, so I mean, that's what, I didn't know this when I went back to get my master's, and I was interested in teaching, that, you have to have your percentage of courses in the subject you're going to teach. So I didn't want to I wanted to get a master's in leadership, but I wanted to teach criminal justice, and didn't pay, so I had to get a master's in criminal justice. So that's why I ended up getting that master's degree. And so I started the side hustle, and I was just training by myself in parks. I'd meet clients there and do private instruction. And next thing you know, I was taking way more phone calls than I was doing teaching.
Nice. So did your side hustle probably turn into like a full-time business? It sounds like off referrals.
It did. I had a couple of things to my advantage. One, coming back to Kentucky, I knew a lot of people here because that's where I was raised and worked. And then I still had ties into the law enforcement community. And so some people that brought their dog, there's personal dogs to us that were people I used to work with. And the word just spread. It was word of mouth, social media presence, and not, that's the new word of mouth, right? That's exactly what when we tried everything in marketing that you could possibly do, and it absolutely produced nothing. So save your money. And don't go down there. When we spent thousands of dollars when we first went full time with our company, and it was just a waste. We might as well went outside and threw it in the street and let somebody else have it, because it generated nothing. So
Social media is where it's at, huh?
you don't. I hate the platforms.
Of course.
I don't
We
like
all do.
I don't like social media. I always give a public service announcement, folks. This is not a real place. People are showing you their wave tops. This is not how it actually works. Business is really, really stinking hard. These videos that you see are made to look like everything's perfect, and nothing that we do is perfect, and everything is broken.
Everything.
Everything.
Yep.
That's right.
Everything.
And the sooner you figure that out, that it's not going to be perfect, and you just put your head down and grind and keep working, you're going to be better off for it.
Well, let's talk about how hard it is, right? One of the first things I think you mentioned was facing failure, right?
Yeah.
It's a major challenge. We're all afraid to fail. I think largely because society puts that pressure on us in any endeavor that we kind of set out on to achieve or whatever. There's always pushback. I'm sure you got pushback when you said, I'm going to go dog train full time. And people are like, why don't you just stay on the force or whatever? Like, with what I'm doing here, my dad very largely doesn't understand what I'm doing. He doesn't understand the power of conversation and the internet, and that there's trillions of dollars out on the internet that are just there for the taking. You just have to get into that stream, So what did that look like? Like, what were some of the hardest things you dealt with at first? I'm sure belief in yourself was one of them, because I know that was a big one for me.
Everybody has imposter syndrome. I mean, none of us think we're good enough to do anything. Why the heck do you want to come to me and give me money for something?
Right.
And that's the first thing that you have to look at is your business solving a problem? If your business is solving a problem, then you're going to do pretty well.
It's really kind of that simple.
It is that simple. It's not. This is not right. It's not rocket science, folks. There are people. I got some great business advice early on from some people that were millionaires, and the biggest thing they told me, and it wasn't about money. He said, "Don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah,
jump in, do it." He said, "I've started many businesses that didn't make it." Mm-hmm. He goes, "I'm too dumb to quit, and there's people smarter than me that could have probably done it, but they're just afraid."
Yeah.
So don't be afraid. If it's something you want to do, you can do it. And you can. My wife and I sacrificed a lot. We started the business. Like I said, I was training dogs in the park by myself, and it was growing and growing and growing. And then we got our first location, and then it looked like tumbleweeds were blowing across. So nobody was coming in. And so now, back then, it was a $3,000 lease on a space. And I'm like, how are we going to pay this $3,000 lease on this space? Her response to me was, "Hey, it's November, Christmas is coming, and the landing gear is not down, and we're coming in hot." So, so we sold a car, and I walked to work.
There you go.
That's what I did, and that got us through Christmas, through the holidays, and then the phone started ringing again.
Right.
And that's just what happens, So
it's so great that you point this out, because it makes me think back to the very first episode of this show where I had Rich Mulder on, and he started his own gym, Liberty Performance, in Phoenix, Arizona, out there. And he got to this point where he was just out of money, and he's just sitting in it. He's sleeping in his gym at that point. And he's like, I just have to find a way to make more money. And he just kept showing up every day, and then he made more money. And it's like, that's the shit you're going to face. Like, I don't have a car. I structured my finances where I don't have a car because I'm here all day working. You know what I mean? Like, give myself that runway, right? Would I like to have a car? Absolutely. I'd love to have a car, right? Like, it sucks having to, really sacrifice a lot of things. My wife works out of the house. She's got the one vehicle that we have, and so anything I need to go do, I have to wait for her to get off work. I have to, figure it out in my schedule. How can I get to this place at this time, based on what she's got going on and what I've got going on. It's not fun. It's miserable, but it's what has to be done to accomplish the mission right now. And I'm cool with it. I mean, I've actually kind of gotten accustomed to it. It's actually like kind of, for me, driving's a distraction for me. I'll just drive around aimlessly for no reason, and
Right.
obviously that costs money, particularly, with gas being as high as it is now and whatever. So, it's just better for me to not have a car. And that's one of the sacrifices I have to make. Also, because I've structured finances in a way that gives me an infinite runway to continue to do this until I get to where I want to be, there's not a lot left over to do anything fun whatsoever. By and large, I'm here from, like today, 7 a.m. till probably 10 p.m. tonight, just grinding, just showing up and putting in the work. And I think that's where people get hung up. They just don't understand. You have two things that you can make a business move forward with: time and money. And if you don't have any money, it's a whole lot of damn time.
Yep. It truly is, man. Again, if it's about work, and it doesn't matter what you do, people that are millionaires, that 1% of people in the world, they have sacrificed so much to get there. There are very few overnight successes. There's some people that's made some decisions and it was just, hey, fortune blessed them and it showed up, but that is a very small percentage.
Outliers. Yeah, those are outliers.
Yeah. And it goes both ways. You can, the more you fail, you can get into failure complex as well and just keep failing, because you're afraid to do it again or afraid to make a change or pivot. I'm not attached to anything in my business. I'm married to my wife. I'm not married to anything else. She's the backbone of all that we do here. If I wasn't married to her, I probably wouldn't have had a business. I would have let it fold a long time ago. But she stepped up and did the things because she's not a dog trainer. She doesn't want to be a dog trainer. But she did a lot of things in the business that took that off my back.
Yeah.
That helped me not have to focus on stupid crap of business, because there's a lot of, taxes and, just things that you don't know about. The IRS was $500,000 me to death for the first 3 years of my life. Every 3, 4, 5 months, that we owe me $500. You owe me at that. Where does that come from? I don't know we don't even know where it was coming from. They just send you a bill. There's no, it doesn't tell you for what. They just, you owe us money. And you're like, well,
right.
Well, I didn't budget for that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And then of course, over time, the best thing we did was got an accountant. And
man,
well, you have to take things off your plate that you're not good at. If you're
absolutely.
If you're struggling with something and you're not, we made more mistakes with the IRS and paid them more money than I've ever paid my accountant.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the better money spent? When they tell me that I write a check now, I don't even think about it. That's exactly what I need to do.
Right.
And it's off my plate and they take care of it. If there's an issue, they take care of it. And then the people that are afraid to do that, accountants, companies, if you're a small business, they charge you less. And as you grow, they grow with you. Yep. There's a lot of companies that do that. So it's very doable to get into a good place and, shop around and find some folks and have those conversations, and they're out there. They're really good.
Well, and this goes back to what you said at the very beginning. Nobody does this alone, ever. And this is a prime example. I have 2 guys on my team right now. Eventually that'll be 4 guys and maybe 8 guys, whatever that looks like. Actually looking at getting an accountant, a CPA right now, because I have no desire to deal with any of that shit. I have zero desire for it. And here's the deal. I'm looking for a CPA that's going to help me operate in the gray. I'm not giving the government any more money than they deserve. Right. And that's just it. I can't figure that shit out on my own. That would take me. I mean, I could figure it out. I could learn it. I could dive into all the regs and figure out how to play the game, but then it's going to take me away from something else that I'm actually good at.
Well, then your business would then be a CPA. That's exactly what you would do. Time you figured all that out, then you'd have a company and you'd be a CPA. Because that's how much work it would take you to be that good at it. Right.
Right.
So that's why you give it to someone that knows what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And, because one big lesson that I learned sometimes is just because I add a person to my business, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to gain more profit from my business.
Right.
Sometimes there's, I always, how many dogs I got to train to pay for that? That's a simple math we do, right? But then there's things along the way that we hired people that don't really bring value as far as training a dog, but they work on staff that brings value to the people that work there, that make their lives easier, that makes us more efficient, more productive for the client. That's a better, you see where this is going, right?
I do. Absolutely.
So why it costs me a little money to have that person, and again, a bang for buck. No, on the book, it's not the value that I would like to see, but overall business experience, is that where the value comes from? And the answer is yes. And that's important to have too.
Well, and honestly, opening your wallet to pay people to take care of your team, to make the environment better, better pay for whatever your employees are, all of that actually elevates you as the business owner, and over the long term will make you make more money. Like being greedy and selfish and treating your employees like shit and not having a great work culture just to get close to 100% of what you're bringing in because you're greedy is never going to end well for you. You're going to have high turnover in employees. You're going to get a bad reputation as a shitty place to work. And, you're going to have a hard time eventually finding good people to do the things that if you would have just taken care of those people you brought on in the first place, like I'd rather have 50% of something than 100% of nothing. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
No reason to be greedy here. Take care of those people that work for you. Make it a good experience for them to come work in your business. I think that's sound advice.
Yeah, my mentor that I talked about earlier that gave me some really good advice was always pay your people first. We have in times of when it's short, we have cut our salaries and not taken money to be able to pay our people.
Yes, sir.
We've never not paid our people. And that's the other thing, because you make decisions. Sometimes they're not popular with the people that work there, but they also don't see the big picture of what it costs me to have an employee. The state charges me 18% more per employee to have you on payroll. And I have to pay that. You don't pay it, I pay it.
Right.
After it reaches a certain point, it goes down to 11%. But so that it costs me that much money to have an employee.
Insane.
And people don't realize that how much, and these are all I didn't know it either. And people don't realize, that the business owner, the internet, advertising, building, insurance. Our people all have insurance now, medical insurance. And that was a really big thing for us to get because we wanted them to have a nice place to work.
Right.
And we also have a incentive. We incentivize with bonuses, and once you get to a certain point each month and you reach your base salary, then every dog after that you have a bonus.
Nice.
And then we incentivize that when you can do less, when you can do your own consultations and own lessons, you make more money per dog. When you're just training, you'll make a little less, but when you can add the value of taking care of that client, we pay you a little more, and it just keeps building that way. So when you get hired here, you can say, okay, what's the number you want to make?
Right.
And again,
you have a roadmap. You can go do it.
And it goes back to this: how many dogs I got to train to get there?
Yeah,
because it's all about the numbers, right? And that's what it is. And so you say what your number is, and then you shoot for it. And sometimes people want more time off, so those numbers are less during those times, and that's your decision, and that's what you do.
And that's the fun part about being an entrepreneur. I want more time off. I can take it.
I haven't figured that out yet. Me and my wife, that's one thing we have not been good at. We have not taken time for ourselves very much.
Well, I imagine that's why I remember from our previous conversation, you're trying to get out of the dog training program. You're trying to get out of that business. You're back on the force now. What led to that decision?
Stupidity. No. You just back to service. I saw some of the things that was happening in the world, and my stepson is taken over the brick and mortar of Double H Canine, and that was the plan all along. I can't do it forever. His journey into that is a great story in itself. He about a younger guy. We always hear the younger generation doesn't work hard. Well, that's not true. He crushed it.
Good.
He spent he came on as an unpaid employee, cleaning up kennels in the back, picking up crap.
Started at the bottom, worked his way to the top. I love it.
You got to know what makes it, because everybody will say dog training is my passion. Okay, well, hey, that Belgian Malinois back there just blew up his kennel with diarrhea and ran through it and looked like somebody painted it with a Wagner fire painter. Go back there and clean that and tell me all about your passion.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh,
because
man.
that's not passion at all. That's a crappy job.
Shit. That's shit work. Nobody likes that.
Yeah. As it's funny because I used to be out in the front of the building where we break dogs and stuff, and I had a pooper scooper, and one of the guys stops one day, and one of our clients says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Picking up money."
Right.
No dog poop, man, no money. This is the way it goes. And it is what it is. But that's not the passionate side of dog training. That's not an Instagram reel that makes you look famous.
Right.
That's the daily of the job. And if I don't model what I expect from my people, if I don't go out and pick up poop occasionally, and I say, "Why haven't you picked up poop?" Well, how important it is to me.
Yeah.
You model what you want, right? And inspect what you expect, right?
Yep. Lead by example, man. 100%. So you're working on a new project called the Grizzled Guild, which is, let's talk about what is the Grizzled Guild as a whole.
Well, as not that I'm getting any older, I just turned 58. So I think it's just, for me, it's a lot of self-exploration about, are you staying in shape? Have I let my health go a little bit with the business? I'm not as near as fit as I was when I was on the police department. So that's something I've changed in my life again. And then about reaching out to men that I think, let's see, this is not going to be politically correct. The feminization of men is a bunch of crap. Men are men. They need a place to be. They need to remember that, what you do is a very valuable part of our world. Our young men do not have a rite of passage like every other culture in the world does. And we need that.
Yeah.
And so that's something I write a Substack right now, which is free. And that's what the Grizzled Guild is right now. It's just nothing more than a Substack. And it's, 2 or 3 minute read every day about something that I think is important to men, that I think is valuable to me. And I just try to share that with other men to say, hey, man, you're not alone. We're here.
It's so important, man. You're not the only one I've talked to that's doing work like this. Several people here in the recent weeks that I've talked to that are, really, really kind of fed up with kind of the way men are being treated in society and kind of the narrative around men, trying to create spaces for men, to, I don't even know, to work on themselves, to understand, I guess, get the noise out of their head, dump all the crap that spins around in there for us, with another group of men who understand kind of what they're going through, and really a place to be vulnerable and understand you're not alone in what you're going through, and that you can make it through this, give you some tools to help you, kind of maintain that mental health and not spiral out of control and then really end up weak, if you will.
Yeah, well, that's what happens. That's what the world wants. The enemy, and I don't know, what your beliefs are. We believe in God, and we try to follow Christian ethos, and it's really important to me. And the enemy wants you to be separated and weak. He doesn't want you to band together with your tribe and get stronger and grow together. And so that's what you need to do. Find a tribe, surround yourself with like-minded individuals. My wife, she is my equal.
Yes.
And there's nothing weak about my wife. She was on the SWAT team as a police officer. She's a great shooter. She carries a 1911, folks. She is, she's a warrior. Awesome. And she's by my side all day long. She's my partner, my backup. And even she, once a month or so, I have men over. I'm redoing this little studio out here, this garage. And we have a man night. There's 6 or 7 guys that come over, and we sip on a couple of bourbons, and we have some food, and we talk, and we share things to let people, each other know that you're not alone, and whatever you're going through, brother, I got you.
Yeah. And the point of that is really like, if you look, and I'm sure, so you're 58, I'll be 40 in May. So, you're a generation ahead of me. My grandfather, my father, even my uncle who's older, my mom, there's like 20 years between my mom and her brother. He's a Vietnam guy. All these guys didn't have spaces to go dump all this stuff, right? So what happened is they compartmentalized, my grandfather's a World War II medic. He compartmentalized that experience, which turned into drinking, which turned into, I never saw it, but my dad said that he saw it. And my grandmother never, who is the most important woman in my life, to this point, other than my wife, but she never mentioned it. But my dad distinctly remembers as a kid, his dad getting drunk and beating on his wife. My uncle, told me when I joined the Army that was the biggest mistake I was ever making, because of his experience with going to Vietnam twice, coming back being spit on by society, and, no benefits, none of that shit. Right. So it creates this kind of loop that we get stuck in. And largely that's the work I'm doing, right? Like showing our veterans that the way you were raised in the Army, the way you saw your parents, compartmentalize, the hard things, you need to talk about that stuff. We heal through conversation.
Absolutely.
And that's the best part about, having this show and this platform and getting to talk to guys like you and all the other 60 other people that have been on this at this point is, we all get to heal through conversation. This conversation, whether we know it or not, is going to help somebody out there. And I think it's really important that we all understand that. And this goes for everybody, males, females, it doesn't matter. You need a place where you can go and talk about those things that are ailing you, judgment free, and understand that you're not alone in that. And I think it's awesome that you're setting this up, man. I think it's awesome that you have 7 or 8 guys a couple of times, a month over at your house to do this, because you could do it in an online format too, but I don't think it's as powerful as just being in person around other people, because there's some kind of energy that comes out of that when you release those bad things out of your head. And I'm so glad that you're doing this, man, because there needs to be more of this across the board for everybody. If more groups would get together and talk about these hardships and these traumas and all of that, I think we as a community, as a society, will heal.
Oh, I agree. I couldn't agree more. The thing, back in 1999, yeah, I was involved in a shooting on the police department, and the guy ended up, he died, and we were trained up to an extent, but we wasn't trained for the aftermath.
Well, nobody trains for that. Nobody trains anybody for that.
Right. So what did that process look like afterwards? Now you're sitting there in front of the grand jury and they're asking, can we indict them for murder? And you're like, what? Excuse me? So, but what happened, and the reason I wanted to bring that up is that there were men in my life at that time that came and had quiet conversations with me. And we sat and drank coffee or had a meal or walked. And the more that I was able to talk and to share that story, the better I got.
Yeah, the less of a burden it becomes.
And it was gone,
Yeah.
Because I hadn't done anything wrong, in the end. And of course, we weren't indicted. We were found that we were justified in what we did. And it was his decision that night, not ours. We just, the finality came from us, but we didn't cause that. He did.
Mm-hmm.
And, the department I worked for back then, they supported us really well.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, it wasn't anything like that at all. I can't imagine having to go through that and not being supported. Even the politicians, the county judge executive at the time came in and said, "Hey, we know that you guys are right, and we're going to support you to the bitter end. We won't settle for anything. We'll fight it off." Because he had stabbed his wife and she ended up suing us for wrongful death. So.
I don't understand people sometimes, man.
So, but anyway, they didn't settle with them either. So it ended up finally getting dismissed. But your life's in upheaval for a year, 2 years, and however long that civil suit lasts.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. But having those guys that come along beside you and talking and being able to speak with people, and some guys never said a word; they just listened.
Right.
And that's really important, just to get off. And the more, like I said, the more I told the story, the better it got for me. And and I really appreciate those moments in time that those guys took. It's important.
It's an important lesson, and I'm glad you shared that with us, because I really do believe, man, we can heal through conversation. Just conversation. That's it. Just and not empty conversation. It has to be meaningful conversation, right? Like
Yeah.
we're having a meaningful conversation, telling stories. And I think that's important. So
Absolutely.
what advice do you have for veterans who are struggling to find their next mission? Like, what would you tell them through the transition, through all the hardships in life? What one piece of advice would you give them that you think, would really help them in the moment right now?
Well, I don't know about one piece of advice. That's a really tough. One is you can do anything you want to do. That's the bottom line. It's how much do you want it?
Yep.
If you break the process down into the smallest steps possible, you can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? Well, did you get your business license yet? Get your business license. Whatever, call it whatever you want to, and then what's the next step in that process? What's the next step? Break it down into small, attainable goals, and you can reach whatever you want. I never imagined that Double H Canine would be where it is today. We have, at the height, we had 2 locations, 10 employees. We built into a $1 million business and done very well. Yeah, just training dogs and picking up dog food. That's what we did. So you can do anything you want, and it's important to have a mission. And I think that you got to love the process. Don't worry about the end. It's a marathon and not a sprint. Just fall in love with the process, man. And you will. If you take those moments of time and have, my wife and I, we've had such hard conversations, such great conversations, because we struggled together with this business. She sacrificed a lot with me. This is not a solo entrepreneurship. This is, my wife is the driving factor for a lot of our success here. And make no bones about it, I got to train dogs, and I was blessed to be able to do that because she broke off a lot of the hard pieces.
Love it, man.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I am not self-made, man. She's the wheels on the bus. Let me tell you, and she makes it go round and round.
I love it, man. Where can people find you? I know you hate social media, but it's a necessary evil.
I'm trying to do better. I'm launching an online dog training thing, trying to get people some more information and help them with their dogs and on a grander scale. But doublehcanine.com, it's Rich at doublehcanine.com is my email. Rich Harden on social media. We have Instagram and Facebook. I'm not great with answering those messages back, but I try to do better. But Rich at doublehcanine.com, and Double H Canine is all spelled out. That's the easiest way. Email is the easiest way if you have a question or you want anything, man. If somebody's out there that's struggling with something, and just, if I can help you, man, I'll do my darndest to try to help you.
I love the move to online dog training. I may be a customer here very soon. When's all that going to launch?
I don't know. I've been working on it for a couple of years. Because I watch the online dog stuff and I just can't stand it, man. It just drives me crazy what I see out there, and I know that some of these people have never built anything, and so they're not telling the whole truth.
Right.
So
right.
I think that's been the hardest thing for me to do, but it's also hurt my business because I've ignored it.
Right.
And we do have something. Obviously, we have something of value to offer people because we've done very well on a brick and mortar.
Yes, sir.
We have 3 little rules we live by with all of our people in our business. Is you treat your client like they're gold. You call people back immediately, and you take care of each other.
That's it. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Rich Harden. Please like, share, rate, review, subscribe, download, all that good stuff. Help us get this in front of 1 million veterans to save lives before I turn 40 on May 9th. God, I almost said my birthday. 2025. Jesus. It's early in the morning. Rich, I really appreciate you being here and telling your story, man.
Absolutely.
It was an honor to sit here and have a conversation with you. And man, I can't wait for people to hear your story and to really take the advice that you've given them to just get out of their own damn way and start something and just keep showing up every day. So I really appreciate you being here, brother. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you guys next week. Take care.
The honor was mine. Thank you.
That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.